Hello, Professor Jeff. How are you?
Okay, how you doing, Nori?
Good, good, thank you.
Good.
Hello, Professor. How are you today?
Hey, Martha, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Good.
Good. See, Ruba just came in. Ruba.
Professor Jeff, I have a meeting 1:30 to 2 from work. Am I in earlier? But just to give you a heads up.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, we'll see I'm really curious how you guys are feeling and what questions you have. I'd really like today to be sort of a question and answer workshop day. So if people don't have questions, then we might end really early too. We'll see, because I don't want to just lecture for 2 hours. So we'll see what you guys have today too. So that's totally fine. And Daryl just came in. I bet that's Daryl in the chat. Yes, it is. Hey, Daryl. Daryl says hi in the chat. Martha says hi too. And Rahila's here.
Hi, Professor.
Hey. So we've got most of our usual group. We'll wait another minute or two and then see anybody who can. Usually I don't ask for lots of conversation at the beginning. I know people are at work, people are doing their thing. Anybody who can, how are you guys? How are you feeling? What's going on? Only answer if you want to and you can. Oh, cool. Well, I hope you're all doing well.
Yeah, so far so good. Thanks for asking. But Professor Jeff, I started with my project. I think I'm almost 70% done so far. I pick up the theme they called the dream versus reality. It was a tough one. So what I talk about is like do you want me to discuss it now or wait till later to everybody?
Let me hold on 1 second. I'll just see if anybody else has short questions, because this, like Nori's question, especially now I'm really just talking to you guys, to Daryl and Ruba and Martha. If you guys have specific questions about your own project or an idea that you're writing about, that's really what I want to do today. So Nori, I am happy to jump in and look at, talk about a more specific or detailed example. But first, I just want to make sure anybody else, just last call, any short questions before we jump into some big ideas, big topics? I'll open up the document here too, just to make sure, the assignment sheet, just to make sure we're looking at the quotes. Yeah, okay, please, Nori, go ahead.
Yes, I pick dream versus reality. I talk about when George was living with his parents. His aunt was alive that time. I thought that was reality. But when he dreams, in a dream, he saw his aunt was killed by a car crash, and we wake up the next morning that that was actual reality
Yes.
for him.
Yes.
And I also talk about, you know, how people dream can change reality. You know, people have a dreams um, to to make their life better,
Yeah.
to be better, you know. So I talk about that as well. Is this the good way to go for? Am I going the right way or?
Yeah, I think, of course, then just because of the assignment, I'll ask you, okay, so then if you're talking about the theme of dreams and reality, beautiful. But you just do want to make sure that you're connecting it back to one of these quotes, right? Since we're doing the literary analysis by looking at the quotes. So which quote did you choose? And how did you connect that quote back to your theme there?
Yeah, I chose one quote. I'm working on the second one for today sometime. But I chose the first one was let's see which one was it. I have to open my this one or sit a while, shoulders slammed. He
Yes.
wanted to yell at Haber, Dr. Haber.
Yeah.
So because he was not upset about his dreams and what's going on and how the reality changes. So I thought, you know, that could be connected to my team.
Good. Okay, so say a little bit more about this. Is perfect, right? So everybody who's here, please, you guys can contribute if you want, or just sort of keep listening. But again, for people watching on the recording, this is exactly what I'm going to be looking for when I'm grading. So thank you again, Nori, for using your example here. So I'll just read that quote that Nori was talking about, and then we can think about how to connect that to the theme that he's interested in. So the full quote that Nori started with is, "Or sat a while, shoulders slumped." He wanted to yell at Haber, "Liar, why do you lie to me?" But the impulse was not a deep one. It led nowhere. For all he knew, Haber was incapable of sincerity because he was lying to himself. He might be compartmentalizing his mind into two hermetic halves, in one of which he knew that Orr's dreams changed reality and employed them for that purpose, in the other of which he knew that he was using hypnotherapy and dream abracation to treat a schizoid patient who believed that his dreams changed reality. I think great, definitely, Nori, to choose this one to talk about the idea of reality, what's real, how does that connect to dreams? Absolutely makes sense. So then I'll ask you again, so how did you start to do that? Or where do you see examples of that just in this quote? Let's be, so your example of his aunt is totally appropriate for the book, right? And just in this quote, where do you see this idea of dreams and reality?
Yeah, I believe I picked let's see. And this quote, I mentioned that Dr. Haber is really not focused on his treatment. He's focused on changing reality from his own benefit,
True.
Dr. Haber benefit. And meanwhile, or it was concerned about his mental health and his mental states that he's not happy what situation he's in. He's still having those dreams that he's not wanted to dream those. But I'm still working on it to see make it better.
I love it. I love it. And I'll ask you, Nori, so everything you just said is true. Would you put that under setting or point of view? Everything you just said, how would you sort of describe what you just
that was a point of view. Let me I have to bring my essay to see. I believe I put it under the quote was I put him under the setting, I believe. Yeah, I put him under
good. That I was going to say, everything that Nori just described there is sort of like really great setting, right? It's very clear that Nori read the book. He understands what's happening in the book at the time of this quote. You're giving sort of good details and good information about how Haber was feeling, how Orr was feeling. Great setting, great description of the setting. Now let's finish here. So, and if we keep this same format, so Which character is being described in that quote, Nori?
It's or George.
Who is being described? Who is George? I think
The author describing the George, I believe.
No?
No?
I want to help Nori or have a different idea.
Okay.
Let me show you my comments and work.
Is it about this same quote?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
that'd be great. Yeah, that'd be great. Let me make sure that I can.
Can you stop sharing to
Yep.
start sharing?
Yep, and let me make sure that I just want to make sure you have the permission you need. Yes, you're good. Go ahead, please.
Okay.
Ooh, perfect. Ruba chose the same quote. This is fantastic. Oh, Wenchen's here. Hey, Wenchen.
Mm. Okay. Hmm. Can you see?
I can.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect.
So I chose the code 139, and the one you are talking about is
Okay.
here.
Perfect.
This one. I wrote in the setting.
Good. So this quote comes in the middle of chapter 6. In this part, we know that George's dreams change reality and Dr. Haber is his doctor. In this quote, George was so upset and yelled at Dr. Haber because he, George, feels that Dr. Haber wants to use him as a tool and try to hide something from him. In other words, Dr. Haber is not saying the truth to George. Great. Again, really nice. Some of the same ideas that Nori was talking about there. That's great. And then Ruba's got that character described, Dr. Haber. Yes, I do think this quote is sort of describing Dr. Haber, right? We get the description. Now,
But to be precise, it was inside Dr. Haber's mind.
Okay, let's go back up to the quote. Show me in that quote, Ruba, where we have evidence that we are inside Dr. Haber's mind.
Because when I read the quote, I feel the author tell us what's going on in Dr. Haber's mind.
Scroll back up just a little bit, Ruba. Let's look at the quote. I'll read it again. This is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted to do today. Okay, so Orr sat a while, shoulders slumped. This is sort of more third person omniscient, right? Sort of like if we took a picture of what was happening in the room, we would see George, you know, in that sentence, George is being described. But then we go inside of whose mind, or when it says Orr sat a while, shoulders slumped, he wanted to yell at Haber. So who wanted to yell at Haber?
Or yelled Haber.
So now we've got a sentence where we are inside a character's mind, right? Where we are understanding what the character's thinking and feeling and wanting. So I think right away, to me, again, people watching the recording, and again, thank you, Ruba, thank you, Nori, a perfect example. This type of connection between the first sentence and the second one, when Chen is saying, I think it's the author. Of course, everything is the author, but here, if I'm going to make you choose a character, this is an example of how we are seeing Dr. Haber as George sees Dr. Haber, right? Because we are inside of George's mind, right? He wanted to yell at Haber, liar. Why do you lie to me, right? So then we get a quote of what George wants to say to Haber. Then, but the impulse was not a deep one. It led nowhere. For all he knew, who's the he in that? For all he knew?
George?
Yes, thank you, Nori. Nori was a little like, George. This is still George. For all he knew, for all George knew, Haber was incapable of sincerity because he, Haber, now this he is going back to this proper noun here, Haber, was lying to himself. He might become part, all of this stuff, this is a great quote for point of view, because we get this idea of he wanted to yell at Haber's, like the author saying, ooh, here's some information about how George is feeling. Then once we're inside George's head, we're just looking at Dr. Haber as George sees him, right? All of this stuff, he might be compartmentalizing his mind. Is George imagining or trying to think about what is going on inside of Dr. Haber? And we know that this is true because, as Ruba points out in the setting, as Nori pointed out in the setting, earlier in the book, I think it's chapter 3, we already know that Dr. Haber knows that George's dreams really do change reality, right? As the reader, we already know that Dr. Haber knows that. But here we see George doesn't know that yet. George isn't sure. And that's why we get this part at the end, in one of which, again, George is sort of thinking, what is going on with Dr. Haber, right? So he's sort of imagining two possibilities, in one of which he, Dr. Haber, knew that Orr's dreams changed reality and employed them for that purpose, option 1, or in the other of which, he knew that he was using hypnotherapy and dream abrication to treat a schizoid patient who believed that his dreams changed reality. This is sort of George trying to understand and figure out what is going on with Dr. Haber. So in this quote, we are seeing Dr. Haber from George's point of view, right? And because we're from George's point of view, we still don't, the reader doesn't know that Dr. Haber knows. But as I said, of course, we already do know that, because earlier in the book, the author made it clear that Haber knows what's going on. Now, again, I know that that's a big, complex sort of idea, but as I explain it, does it make sense? What questions come up? Does that make sense, Ruba?
The only thing confused me, Jeff Professor, is that when the port came and shoulder slammed, so that's the first part of that quote. I was told the author is describing George, but you're right, in the sentence, he's like more pointing to Dr. Haber.
Yes, good, absolutely correct. And again, you see that it's why I'm asking you to do this type of literary analysis, like with smaller quotes instead of starting with a big book, because what I want you all to start to understand about fiction, anything, it could be a short story that's 10 pages, or a book like this it's a pretty short novel, right? Some novels are hundreds and hundreds of pages. What I want you to understand is, this is not like academic writing, right? Where you could say, ooh, this is a body paragraph where we're analyzing the thesis statement through data. Okay, that means each sentence in that paragraph has that same purpose, right? But in fiction, what you start to see is this mixture and blend of things, especially with really beautiful authors, right? Really wonderful authors don't just sort of tell a story like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and everything is super clear. This is a good example of, okay, we've got a sentence at the beginning of this quote, which sort of explains the setting, helps the reader see what's going on, and then the reader jumps inside of that character's mind, right? And all of a sudden, we're seeing the setting from that character's point of view. And even though this is a, like I said, big, new, complex idea, once you start to get more practice with it, I promise anytime you see fiction or you're reading a novel in any language, you see this jumping, right, from sort of different writing style, even from sentence to sentence and paragraph to paragraph. So I totally agree with you, Nori. That first sentence is more just like, hey, George, it's describing George. And then one sentence later, we're in George's head. And to me, I think, I'll just say that's the exciting thing about fiction. Now, it's challenging if you're taking a college class and you have to analyze it, but as a reader, it's the exciting thing. I think it's why people like novels and stories and fiction, because we can do that. In our real life, we can't just go from third person omniscient and then all this, or excuse me, we can't go from third person descriptive and then all of a sudden we're in someone else's head. We can't do that in real life. And I think that's why stories are so interesting and people love them so much, is you can, right? We can, all of a sudden we jump inside of George's head. Cool. So Nori, Ruba, does that make more sense about why this is George's point of view?
Okay. I said it, the author point of view, because when I read it, I feel that.
Right, but remember, this goes back to what we've been talking about for the past couple of weeks here, right? Again, the author is presenting you all kinds of things, right? But if the author is using third-person omniscient narration, right? We know what a character is thinking, feeling, or doing. And then when the author is using third-person omniscient narration to describe another character, we are seeing that character through we are seeing that other. I was going to get lost here. This is just an example of a quote where we are seeing Dr. Haber through George's eyes, right? We are seeing Dr. Haber through George's thoughts. Now, again, I'd say if we were going to chop this quote up, right, you could say the first sentence, or sat in the chair with his shoulders slumped, that we could say is the author's sort of third person descriptive narration, right? It's just describing what George is doing. But then immediately in the next sentence, we jump into George's head. We're looking at Dr. Haber, and we are seeing Dr. Haber as George sees him. Yeah.
Professor
But when someone, for example, I'm talking with you, I don't know what's going on in your mind.
Correct.
And you don't know what's going on in my mind.
Totally.
So you analyze something, might be right, might be wrong, and I'm also not the same.
Totally. Yeah,
So,
I don't think that trying to do literary analysis of real life is a good idea, because you're correct, Ruba. I can't be inside your head. You can't be inside my head. Of course, we're human beings. We guess all the time, right? Like, I think this person's happy. I think this person's nervous. I think this person's bored, whatever. We do that all the time. And sometimes we're right. And sometimes we're totally wrong. But I think you're absolutely correct, Ruba. This is why, and that's what I was trying to say. I think it's why fiction and stories are very important and powerful for human beings, because we can't do this in real life. We can never, ever, ever know what it's like inside of another person's life. Even the people that are the most close to us, our mother, our father, our husband, our wife, our children, no human being ever knows what it's like to be another person, to be inside their experience, right? But fiction, like I said, short stories and novels give us that opportunity. We feel that we can, because again, when it's well written, when there's good writing, the author puts us there, right? The author puts us in another person's point of view. But I do want to say that is different than third person descriptive, which is just like, if we were describing what's happening right now, the author could say, okay, Ruba asked a great question, and then Jeff started talking and giving his response. That's the author, right? Like, that's the author. But that's totally different than whatever. The author saying, Ruba asked a great question. Jeff started to give his answer. Jeff was nervous because he wanted to make sure that Ruba understood, but he knew that Ruba was a very good student, and he was confident that she would, all that stuff. Now we're inside my head. And when I say Ruba was a very good student, that's my perspective. Do you know what I mean, Ruba? Like, that's what Jeff thinks about Ruba. And that's slightly different than objective reality, right? Like, and again, it's another reason I love this book is there's no answer to this question, right? Like, what is objectively true? And this book makes it very clear, because we see the same situation or the same events from different characters' points of view, right? And in this moment in the story, George is saying, I don't know if Dr. Haber knows or doesn't know, but if the author wanted to, she could jump inside Dr. Haber's brain and he'd say, well, I know what George's dreams do, and I want to use those dreams to change reality, right? Like, so we see the same character, but we see them from different points of view. So You're exactly correct, Ruba. I totally agree. I totally agree.
Rupa, can you share or show us your theme?
Yeah, Nori's
theme
ready
program?
for the theme. Nori was ready for the theme last week. Yeah, so I see Ruba saying the connection to the theme is Or's dreams change reality. Dr. Haber trying to ask George, what's wrong with you, George? Sooner or later things are changed. Good. Do you say any more about the theme?
No.
I just want to see how she started the theme on the top of the.
I think this is her start. I think this is the beginning. So this is a perfect place to begin. So Ruba, do you want to say? So you've got You've got a couple sentences there. Do you want to say anything else about how does this quote connect to the book's bigger themes of reality and dreams and not reality? What did you start writing and what are you thinking?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, Nori, do you want to? You're looking at Ruba has the connection of the theme is Or's dreams change reality. True. Dr. Haber trying to ask George, what's wrong with you, George? Sooner or later, things are changed. Okay, I think Ruba's at the beginning of sort of thinking about some of these ideas.
Maybe the thing I can add it is George objection is just he doesn't want to be the changer who is make the change.
Yes.
Because this is not from his rights or responsibility.
Yes. Now connect that to this quote, Ruba. Where do we see that? I think you're correct. I mean, you are correct. Where do we see or a specific word or a specific sentence in this quote? Where do we see that?
Not in this quote, in another quote in the book, when George
but stick with
was
this, right?
upset.
I'm asking you guys to stick. I'm asking you guys to use these specific quotes to analyze the theme. So stick to this quote. I think there's a couple sentences in this quote that absolutely support the idea that you just said, Ruba.
Maybe the yell when why he want to yell.
I love it. Yes. Why does he want to yell? I love it. Absolutely. Tell me why.
Well, because he doesn't want to change.
Good. Absolutely.
The world.
That's right. He doesn't want to change reality. Good. And I see there's comments in the chat, Wen Chen and Daryl. So I want to come back, but just for the people in the chat, Wen Chen is saying, can I say it's George's point of view? This quote describes how Dr. Haber was in George's mind. Good. Great. And then Daryl was saying he agrees. So absolutely, Wen Chen. So under character described for this quote, whether everyone in this room is doing it or you're watching on the video and now you're going to be able to, for this quote that Nori and Ruba were talking about, the character described, the character being described is Dr. Haber. The point of view is George. Absolutely. We are seeing Dr. Haber from George's point of view. Now, Ruba was saying, okay, there's this idea of dreams and reality. And maybe you could even say for Ruba, it's important, this idea of what is real, what's not real is very important for George because he doesn't want the power, right? He doesn't want to change reality. And we see that reflected in this quote, or we can connect that theme to this quote because right away, George is saying, liar, you're a liar. Why are you lying? Because George feels like, I know Ruba has a great eye and a great mind for identifying a main idea. And I know for Ruba, that idea of George being a tool is very important. So absolutely, in this quote, right, he's like, it's very clear. He's upset, he's angry, he thinks Dr. Haber's lying, but then he's not sure, right? So it's really interesting. And just to add to this, it's really interesting because if you think about George as a character, right, we're inside of his mind, even George is questioning what's real and what's not real in this quote, right? George keeps saying, I'm not sure. George keeps saying, my dreams change reality. That's crazy. That's weird, whatever, but it's true. It's true, right? And then as Ruba said, he doesn't want that. He doesn't want to be able to change reality. But even in this quote, he's not sure what's real and what's not real, right? at the beginning he says, liar, you're a liar. But by the end of the quote, he's going like, well, maybe Dr. Haber doesn't know. Maybe I don't know. You know, maybe he compartmentalized. Maybe he turned a part of his brain off. You know, he's sort of, even George is questioning what he understands to be real, which absolutely connects to this idea that Ruba was talking about a moment ago too, right? Like, liar, liar, why are you using me, right? Why are you using me as this tool? Yeah, I think Nori said earlier, of course, this idea of reality is a very complex one. So I'm not asking you guys to give me a perfect answer in your analysis. I'm asking you to like sit and wrestle with it, because it's hard. I mean, like, good literature usually is gonna ask big questions. You know what I mean? And for me, this is just sort of my theory about literature is the point isn't always to have one clear, perfect answer. Oh, well, that means that Ursula Le Guin, the author of this book, thinks that blah, 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 right? I really think that literature, poems too, we did this in the poetry project and you guys did beautifully, is it's a way to ask questions or look at things in a new and different way or understand things from a different point of view, right? So I just want to keep saying that. I understand that analyzing themes is a big, complex thing to do, and I'm not expecting it to be perfect. What I want is to force you or ask you, you know, you don't have to do anything, but ask you guys to try it, because it'll be painful. You know, it's the first time you're trying this. It's hard. It's really, really hard. And what I want the most is just to have you try. That's what I want to have you do. And I know, okay, anyway, that was enough. That was enough talking. Anybody else? Nori, did that make sense? Or do you want to, that was a lot about theme there a little bit. Idea?
Yes.
Yeah,
It did help a lot. The only thing, the PIV, Ruba has its author, but the POV is actually George, right? In this case.
Yes, and that's what Wen Chen was saying in the chat, and Daryl and Wen Chen were talking about. Yes, so like I said, for this quote, for my beautiful people in this room, for people watching the recording, again, just so many thank you notes should be written to Ruba and to Nori and Martha, everyone who's here. But yes, for this quote, the character being described is Dr. Haber. The point of view is George, right? We are seeing Dr. Haber from George's point of view. We're inside George's brain looking at Dr. Haber.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Can we go back up to the quote, Ruba? Good. Can you go back to quote 2? I just want to look at this and then we'll finish up with it. But if we
one, you mean?
no, stay here, stay for 2, and then we'll keep going. So quote 2 again. I'll read it one more time because I just want to see if there are any other themes we can talk about, or if anybody else has questions. So again, it says, "Orr sat a while, shoulders slumped. Now we're inside of his head. He wanted to yell at Haber, 'Liar! Why do you lie to me?' But the impulse was not a deep one. It led nowhere. For all he knew, Haber was incapable of sincerity because he was lying to himself. He might be compartmentalizing his mind into 2 hermetic halves, in one of which he knew that Orr's dreams changed reality and employed them for that purpose. In the other of which he knew that he was using hypnotherapy and dream abrication to treat a schizoid patient who believed that his dreams changed reality." My question for anyone who wants to think about it is, so what does this quote say? We talked a little bit there about this quote and connecting reality and dreams to George. Any ideas about what this says about Dr. Haber and reality, what's real for Dr. Haber? There's that line that I love there, which is, "For all he knew, Haber was incapable of sincerity because he was lying to himself." I think this is a huge idea in the book, right? Like, if we're lying to ourselves, we can deny reality, even if things are real, right? And this is a big idea. This is a big idea in life, and this comes up in other quotes in the book. So does anybody? And if the answer is no, that's fine. We'll look at Ruba's second quote. But this sentence, "He was incapable of sincerity because he was lying to himself," or what happens when we lie to ourselves. Any ideas or thoughts about theme there?
I think he was trying to change reality, but he was unsuccessful.
Who?
Dr. Haber.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, say more.
So he would try, for all he knew, like he knew that George Green can change reality, but he went too far. I guess he just get all mixed up, and um, he was not able to accomplish things that he wanted. But I don't know.
Do you think, now I'm asking a leading question here, and do you think that he wasn't successful because he was lying to himself? Do you think that that great point you just made, Nori, do you think that that connects to this idea of Dr. Haber lying to himself, or human beings lying to themselves?
Yes, like treating patient in a wrong way. So that he was lying to his patient, and he was lying to himself as well, because he was not 100% sure what he was doing.
Interesting. In the chat, when Chen says, I think this is showing Dr. Haber's greed. He wants power. I agree with that, Wen Chen. The only thing I would add for this quote is, I think it shows that George believes in Dr. Haber's greed, right? This is more, I'm so glad that we're doing this activity, right? But yes, good. Because just remember, keep thinking about point of view, right? Keep thinking about point of view, because absolutely, by the end of this book, it's very clear that Dr. Haber really believes he knows what's best, and he should be able to change the world however he wants. That is very clear, right? But at this point in the story, we're only getting George's beliefs about that, right? We're starting to see George going, what is he doing? Like, is he selfish? Is he crazy? Is he lying to himself? Like, what's going on? Good. And then Wen Chen is saying he knew that Orr's dreams changed reality and employed them for that purpose. Yes. And just remember, though, even that end of the quote, in one of which he knew that Orr's dreams changed. Oh, I'll back up. He might be compartmentalizing his mind into two hermetic halves. So it's almost like two options. George is kind of imagining, okay, well, Dr. Haber might have created a reality for himself, where in one reality, he knows George's dreams change everything, and he's lying to George, right? Or in the other reality, option 2, he's lying to himself, so he just thinks, oh, I'm actually just, George is crazy, and I'm just helping George. So again, George is imagining two possibilities inside of Dr. Haber, right? And that is different than the author of the book saying, yes, for a 100% fact, there are two realities in Dr. Haber's mind, right? That would be more third person descriptive, third person objective, right? True, versus third person within the character, right? Within a point of view. Good. Wen Shen's saying she's got it now. Good. And again, I'll just keep saying, just because I don't know, I never know, because our group is so small, but I know that this is tricky and difficult. I'm not seeking perfection from you guys. I'm just asking you to do it, because it's the first time you practice it. So I really hope and pray. I think if you do this for this assignment, the next time that you read a book in any language, a novel, a fiction book, you'll start to see, like, you'll become more aware of what you're reading. And that is my goal, right? That's my objective for the assignment. So, cool. Any other ideas about this quote before we move on? Cool. You want to look at quote 1, Ruba? Can we look at your other one?
Yes, I have 139.
Excellent.
This is a long, but I love some words. I put it in red, okay?
Oh yeah, persuade, I saw, great. I'll read the quote just so everyone can follow along, and then we'll talk about it, okay? So quote 1, I'm not, Orr said. His hands were sweaty. I'm afraid of, but he was too afraid, in fact, to say the pronoun. of changing things, as you call it. Okay, I know. We've been through that many times. Why, George? You've got to ask yourself that question. What's wrong with changing things? Now, I wonder if this self-canceling, center-poised personality of yours leads you to look at things defensively. I want you to try to detach yourself from yourself and try to see your own viewpoint from the outside objectively. You are afraid of losing your balance, but change need not unbalance you. Life's not a static object after all, it's a process. There's no holding still. Intellectually, you know that, but emotionally, you refuse it. Nothing remains the same from one moment to the next. You can't step in the same river twice. Life, evolution, the whole universe of space, time, and matter, energy, existence itself is essentially change. That is one aspect of it, Orr said. The other is stillness. Great. Can we go down, Ruba? All right, setting. This quote is from chapter 9 in the book. It's in Dr. Haber's office. In my opinion, it is a fruitless debate. Ruba, what's fruitless mean?
When you have a fruit, you have a product.
Yes.
Fruitless, you have nothing.
Good. Fruitless, love it. You have nothing. And therefore, the meaning usually kind of feels like useless, right? No point, pointless, useless, fruitless. Absolutely. Great, Ruba. It's a fruitless debate between George and Dr. Haber. Dr. Haber is trying to persuade or convince George that things are changed and life is not static. Really nice. This quote comes after Dr. Haber's new idea of trying no sleep, no dreams with George. George concerns where he believes that nobody has the rights to play God and he wanted to just stop dreaming. Really nice setting there. Does anyone want to say anything or add to the setting? I think Ruba's got a lot of the main ideas there. Cool. Now, here's where we're still practicing getting tricky. Character described George's ideas, how things are changed in life. Okay. POV, it's Dr. Haber's point of view. Okay. This one's tricky. Let's start with point of view. Can you go back up to the quote, Ruba? There's a clue in here. At the beginning. I'm not, Orr said. His hands were sweaty. I'm afraid of, but he was too afraid, in fact, to say the pronoun. Who is he?
Orr.
Good. Yes, absolutely. Right. So when it says he was too afraid, is that descriptive or omniscient?
Description, maybe.
Is it describing what someone looks like or sounds like, or is it describing inside of a person's thoughts and feelings?
No, inside.
Yes. So we're omniscient now. We're omniscient. And who are we inside of? Are we inside of Dr. Haber or George?
George.
Yeah, exactly perfect, Ruba. Exactly perfect. We're inside George. We know that we're inside George because when it says, but he was too afraid, who was afraid? George was afraid. So now we've got a big, not even a clue, like we're just inside George now, right? We are reading, we are feeling George's fear. Okay, so when we get this next big paragraph, right, everything that Dr. Haber says, right, we are seeing, we are hearing everything that Dr. Haber is saying as if we were George, right? So in this case, we've got point of view, again, is George, but here's what's tricky. Who's being described here? Dr. Haber is talking. Who is Dr. Haber talking about?
George.
Dr. Haber is talking about George, right? So we are getting, George is the point of view because we are seeing things from George's perspective. But when we see what George sees, when we hear what George hears, we are hearing Dr. Haber's opinion about George. So there's some options. You've got choices. for if you wanted to say what the POV was and what the character being described was here. So Ruba, you've got options here. I want to be clear. You could analyze this in different ways. For you, Ruba, who is the character being described in this quote? George.
I said George ideas or how things are changed in life.
I love it. So you can right now, if you want, just delete how things are changed. You can just keep George's ideas. That's perfect, right? So this paragraph, we are getting a description of George, right?
Okay.
And then Ruba's got it. Ruba's got perfect, right? So it is Dr. Haber's point of view about George. And this is where, again, fiction gets so challenging is we are seeing this whole chapter from George's point of view, right? But in this quote, when George is sort of telling us, the reader, what Dr. Haber is saying, it's very clear here, right? That all this stuff about you're afraid, you don't need to be afraid, life is process, life is a change, that is clearly how Dr. Haber feels, right? That's not what George feels. That's Dr. Haber's point of view about George. So when Ruba has character described George, definitely. And then she says, it is Dr. Haber because he's trying to transfer his beliefs to George to keep using him as a tool to achieve his goals. Really nice there. And Ruba in that description has sort of combined point of view. And even if you wanted to add some of that to the theme there, Ruba, like why Dr. Haber is saying these things to keep using George as a tool, that might be even a better part of the theme analysis here. Because why Dr. Haber says the things that he says, how he says the things that he says to George, I think you're right, Ruba. He's always trying to manipulate George. He's always trying to use George. But the most important thing here at the beginning is it gets tricky, it gets complicated, but absolutely. We are reading it, Dr. Haber's description of George. So just to be one more time clear, who's being described in this quote? George. Whose point of view about George are we reading? Dr. Haber's point of view, right? Because I don't think that Heather thinks this way about George, like Ruba was saying, right? I don't think Heather thinks this way about George. I don't think George thinks this way about himself. When the aliens come down, I don't think the aliens think about George this way. But this paragraph is purely Dr. Haber's opinion about George, right? And that's why we've got Dr. Haber's point of view. Questions?
Can we see, can Aruba share a thematic analysis on the top of the paper?
So again, it looks like Ruba's going, this quote, can you scroll down just a little bit, Ruba? Down just a bit.
Where?
Connection to the theme.
Okay.
And does it continue onto the next page? Oh yeah, great. Okay, this quote is connected to the theme dreams versus reality. George doesn't want his dream to change reality because this is not from his rights or his responsibility. Dr. Haber is trying his best to persuade George to believe by everything will not remain as it is. Ooh, okay, really interesting, really, really interesting. Will you say some more about that last sentence, Ruba? George, about Dr. Haber's trying to persuade George that everything will not remain, so there's always change. Say some more about that. That's an exciting idea.
Okay, I just don't want to repeat the sentence.
What do you mean? Which sentence?
Because I said in the setting, persuade and convince. So I don't want to, because it is clear now what I'm going to say.
Got it. Okay. Do you want to say anything more about the theme, or we'll make Nori talk, or somebody else, or I'll just keep talking. But do you want to say more about dreams and reality in this quote? Because I love that last idea about, so if, because do you want to say anything more about this? Everything about changing and then reality and dreams? That's very interesting.
No, I don't have things.
Okay, I'll talk.
Professor
Yeah.
Jeff, I just want to see a theme analysis, Rupa theme analysis, which is the beginning of the project. You see how you formatted it.
Oh yeah, did you write Did you? What else do you have, Ruba, so far? Oh, here at the beginning.
Oh,
yeah.
that's right
This is
here.
the beginning
Right
thematic analysis about
here. Yes.
the theme. I chose the dream versus reality.
Okay. Actually, the themes you wrote are all exist in the light of a novel written by Gwyn, but I think the strongest one is dreams versus reality. In my opinion, I believe that dreams come by themselves and nobody controls his or her dreams. Dreams sometimes are good, other times are bad. It depends on the psychological case of the dreamer. For example, from the beginning of this novel, I realized that George Orr had a negative impact from his bad dreams. He felt that these dreams come true, so he started to be afraid of them, and the time to be treated had come. Another example, after a few pages from the beginning, precisely after 2 sessions with Dr. Haber realized that Orr's dreams had really come true, and he started to use Orr as an instrument for his research. Good. Nori, what do you think?
I like it, yes. I have a lot of different ways how do I put it, but this is more direct, which is I like a lot better.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, interesting. Anybody else in the chat or want to say anything else about Ruba's introduction to the theme here? The thing that I really like about this is because this is a sort of reflection and analysis, Ruba keeps connecting it back to her own ideas, right? I believe that dreams, like Ruba's sort of connecting her own ideas and experiences and opinions to some of the big themes in the book. And again, that's why I asked you to do this part of the assignment, because that's in a perfect world, right? Like even if you never take another literature class again, you guys are doing a major that you never have to analyze another novel. I honestly think, and this is true for all of the things we've read, the narratives and the poems and this book, I strongly believe that human beings create art because it helps them make sense of the world, right? Like Pablo Picasso has a very famous quote, Pablo Picasso, the painter. And the quote is something like, all art is a lie, right? All art is a lie, but it's a lie that we create in order to understand the truth of our world, right? And I think by lie, he just means if you paint a painting or if you tell a story, that doesn't really exist, right? But what I'm mentioning this quote because I love what Ruba did the most here is make some connection between the ideas in the book and your own opinions and your own experiences, right? Again, for me, that's what art is. Art allows us to do that. And without art, we're stuck with only the things that we can see and touch and feel. And human beings have dreams. Human beings have imagination. Human beings are creative. And I really think the reason, whether you think that God put that into our brains or evolution or both or whatever, I really believe that these dreams and creativity and art are essential for human survival from an evolution perspective, because they help us make sense of the world. And that's my favorite thing Ruba did here in this paragraph, is thinking about the big ideas in the book. She's going, ooh, well, in my opinion, in my experience, or I had this idea, right? And I think you could say even more in that second paragraph, right? Like, I think I know Ruba just from working with her. Ruba, you can talk about this if you want, you don't have to. But this idea of Dr. Haber using George as a tool, why is that so powerful or important to you? Do you want to talk about it now?
Something to add, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, from the beginning, because Orr was, for example, he is patient, has bad dreams, and then go to the doctor to get cured. Okay.
Yep.
So after 2 sessions, maybe, Dr. Haber was happy because he just find something used for his research.
Yes.
And George felt like Dr. Haber didn't help him, just use him.
And what is that like? What does that make you think about? And what's your opinion of that? Like, what's your opinion of those situations in life? How do you connect to that? Like, and I'm asking a little bit because I know that this is an important theme for you because I've heard you talk about it and think about it. So I just I'm curious to hear from you. Why is this theme of being used like a tool or asking for help and not getting help? Do you have some idea of why that's a really important idea for you as you read the book?
You mean a dream versus reality?
No.
Why I chose it?
No, I mean, Dr. Haber using George as a tool. And I'm saying, I've heard you think about that, talk about that, write about that for the last few weeks. And as I was saying, I think part of literary analysis is to make a connection between the themes and ideas in the book that really speak to us, that really connect to us. And I guess I'm asking you, you don't have to do it right now, but if you keep writing, I'd say you could answer this question, Ruba, which is, why is that theme of Dr. Haber using George like a tool? Why is that so powerful or important for you?
Because I see the novel is focusing on this.
So does it have any personal connection to you? Is it interesting to you in any way?
Yes, one day I have a dream and I feel it after that.
Okay, well, keep thinking about it. And again, for everybody who's here with me now, Ruba, again, is just so generous. We're getting to talk to Ruba, answer, look at her examples. But those type of questions that I was just asking Ruba, right? Like, why is this important? How does it connect to you? What do those themes make you think about? That's another great, that's sort of, like I said, my dream for this class is that a book, a poem, or a story makes you think about those questions for yourself. Like, wow, that part was really weird. Or, oh, I love this character. And then ask yourself, why? What's going on there? Because that's, I think, the whole purpose of this course, you guys, is to help you understand and think about and write about in English. Of course, for many people, you know, your second, third, fourth, fifth language. Why are stories important? Who cares, right? Why did I have a degree in English literature? Like, why do people study literature? And I think it's to get to this question, right? Like, what is it about a poem or what is it about a book that feels important to you and why? And that's really what I'm asking you to think about with a thematic analysis. So I love that that's what Ruba started to do here in this paragraph.
Professor Jeff?
Please.
And my team, which is I was looking at the big picture when it comes to this. I was thinking that, you know, every individual has a dream, but sometimes the dream is controlled by somewhere in, like in upper class, for example, like a government, or their personal life. Like a lot of kids, their smart kids want to be somebody, but they can't because they don't have the opportunity. They don't have the ability. They have the ability, but they don't have the opportunity to make their dream come true. So usually because of the government, usually because of their personal life, prevent them to have, you know, to fulfill their dreams. And then I went more deeply to the books.
Gorgeous. Perfect. Perfect, Nori. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Right. And again, this is the difference between a research class like 340 or 325 and 350, right? Like this type of writing at the beginning, Ursula Le Guin doesn't say, this is a book about how sometimes people have dreams, but they're not allowed to reach them because other people with more power stop them from reaching those goals, right? That's not a thesis statement. That sentence isn't anywhere in the book. But when Nori says, hey, this is the idea that I understand from the book, perfect. Absolutely perfect, Nori. A perfect example of, yeah, like I said, what are these ideas? What are these events? What are these characters? What are these settings? What do these themes mean to you? What do they make you think about? And the example you just gave, Nori, is absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. Who I see down in the chat. Let me check what's going on. Oh, good. I think it was just one Chen. Good. Cool. Any other questions, ideas, examples? Does anybody else have examples we could look at? I'll keep saying thank you to Ruba 100 times. Thank you, Ruba, for sharing your work with us.
Sharing?
Yes, please go ahead. Thank you so much, Ruba. Just so amazing and generous, and everybody's lucky to get to learn from you, to get to learn with you. What else? Questions, ideas, examples? Heard a lot from Ruba, heard a lot from Nori. Anybody else have ideas or questions or want to talk?
I have a question about the lawyer.
Yeah.
Heather.
Yeah.
Is she died really, or felt she's died?
I love that question. What do you think, Ruba? I'll answer it, but what do you think?
I reached chapter 10. Chapter 10 said she died, and then she's still alive because she with him,
Yep.
with Or.
Yep.
They have dinner together,
Yep.
talk together.
Yep. So is your question, ask your question again.
When she disappeared, he thought she's died.
Yes. 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 I thought, Ruba, you were asking again a sort of really, this is just again, this book is asks big questions, which is why I love it so much. I thought you were asking sort of a philosophical question, which is, okay, Heather dies, Heather disappears, right? George's dreams change reality. Dr. Haber has George change reality. In that reality, Heather disappears. Then she comes back, right? Some version of Heather comes back. For sure. So is that just your question? Did it really happen, Ruba?
No, just feeling, or feeling, I mean. And the other thing is,
okay, good, yeah.
At the beginning, because I saw I watched the movie also.
Yes.
At the beginning of the story, Or went to Heather. She didn't want to help him at the beginning, but after attending one session,
yes.
and she believed something going right or through, she disappeared. After that, when she came, she wants to help him.
Yes.
And to going in the court, and at the beginning, she said it's not from her rights to go to the court and complain about a doctor.
Yes. Yes, all that's true. All of that is excellent. Setting, character, description, plot, absolutely. Yeah, all of that happens. All of that happens in the book. Yes.
So why she felt she died? I don't know.
Anybody wanna go there? Well, one of our quotes is kind of about that, right? This one. This quote is definitely connected to this part of the story, right? Where George thinks she's died. Now, Ruba's saying why. Ruba, you asked, why does George think she's died? The true answer is that would be like more for that would be more like a thematic analysis question, because it's not in the book, right? It's not like we don't get a point of view inside George's brain where he says, oh, I think she's dead because, but we get a little close. We get kind of close, right? Because we've got this quote that happens after Dr. Haber tells George to solve the race problem, right? And here George is, if you're looking at this quote, I'll just tell you right now, we're inside George. We're inside George's POV. This is on page 130. He's very sad. He's in the cabin at this point, I believe, if we're thinking about setting. And he says, but now, never to have known a woman with brown skin and wiry black hair cut very short, so that the elegant line of the skull showered like the curve of a bronze vase. No, that was wrong. That was intolerable. That every soul on earth should have the body the color of a battleship. No. Remember, he's made, everyone has gray skin, right? That's how racism gets solved. Everyone has the same gray skin. That's why she's not here, he thought. She could not have been born gray. Her color of brown was an essential part of her, not an accident. Her anger, timidity, brashness, gentleness, all were elements of her mixed being, her mixed nature, dark and clear right through, like Baltic amber. She could not exist in the gray people's world. She had not been born. Oh, it's so sad. It makes me so sad. George is so sad. I can feel he's so sad in this part of the book. Okay, so like I said, we're in George's head. POV, if you choose this quote, George, right? Now, hopefully pretty easy. Who is being described? Character being described?
Heather.
Thank you. Good. I heard Ruba, I heard Nori say Heather. Yes, again, if you're going to pick this quote. POV, George. Character described, Heather. We are seeing Heather as George sees her, right? Now, Ruba's question is, now we don't know if this is truth, right? Reality versus dreams. We don't know if this is 100% true, but I think in this quote, George has an idea why Heather died, right? George has an idea about why Heather disappeared, and I think it's right here, right? I think this is a point he's making about, again, this book, it's just a genius. It's a work of a genius, you guys. It's just an incredible achievement. This book talks about all kinds of stuff, and race is a big part of it, right? It's not a book about black and white people, but Heather's character, because her parents are, one parent is white and one parent is black, we get these really interesting Heather and George thinking about that and how that makes a part of her identity and who she is and what makes her her. And I think George has this opinion or this feeling like, well, if there's no such thing as race, if there's no white people, no black people, only gray people, well, one thing that defined who Heather is, right, is being part white and part black. So if there is no white and black, if there's only this gray race, Heather can't exist, right? Now, again, is that the true truth? You know, I don't know. By the end of the book, we see gray Heather eventually, don't we? So it's really interesting. It's really complex. So Ruba's question of why is Heather dying and come back, or why does George think that Heather died and came back? Those are two different questions, right? I don't think we get a perfect answer, but I do think it's connected to this quote here, Ruba. I see, hold on, I see another person type in the chat here. Does that make sense, Ruba?
Okay.
When Chen has a question in the chat, it says, for the theme, when Chen has an example, I'll just copy and paste it so we can all see it projected on the screen. Hold on. When Chen's sort of more just practicing theme writing here. So this was from Wen Chen. I think that when something happens to different people, they all react differently. No doubt about that. Look at the pandemic. Some people think that the virus doesn't even exist. That's why everyone is different in real life. For example, when George knows his dream can change reality, then George shows fear and avoidance. However, Dr. Haber shows his desire and greed when he knew George's dreams could change reality. He's using George to get what he wanted. Ooh, lovely, 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 right? Now we could say something like, this is just what Wen Chen's sentences made me think about. Something like this, right? This, just to keep going back to Nori's idea of dreams and reality, Ruba was talking about it today too. Yeah, I think Wen Chen's quote is great, and it starts off with this, even when something happens to different people, they all react differently. Now, again, I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with this, but for when this book was written, especially, even I think it's a little different now, but you know, traditionally, European countries, what we call the West, the United States and Europeans, obsessed with objective reality, right? There's one truth, right? There's only one truth, and everybody needs to understand and follow the one truth. Well, Wen Chen's sentence is much more like this book, right? Which says, actually, even if, let's say, 5 people are watching the same event, they all see it in different ways. They all imagine different possibilities. They definitely have different feelings about it, right? So this idea that, you know, everybody experiences things in different ways is just another way to get to this theme of dreams and reality, right? So if we say, okay, everybody experiences the same situation in a different way, well, holy crap, like what does that mean about dreams and reality, right? Like, does that mean that there is no such thing as a true reality? Now, again, this is a little bit more philosophical than literary. So I'm not asking you to solve, you know, humanity's deepest philosophical questions. Instead, what I'm asking you to do is show me parts in the book where Ursula Le Guin is asking those big questions. Right? So that's what I mean about connecting examples in the book or ideas in the book to the big picture. Like Nori was saying, back to the big picture. Again, I'm not asking you to answer those questions. I'm not asking you to solve these problems. What I am asking you to do is to show me how characters and settings and ideas in the book connect to some of those big picture ideas that Nori was talking about. Wen Chen, did that make sense? My sort of, you inspired me to sort of write a couple sentences there. Does that make sense? The connection between your original interesting idea and sort of what it made me think about? And not just Wen Chen, but since it was her idea. Anybody else can join in too. Wen Chen says yes. Oh, good. Okay, good. Great.
The last question I have, Professor, and then I have to log out at 1:30.
Yeah,
is do you want the format like the setting in the table format, or you want to just a heading on top of each sentence?
The real answer is you can do whatever you want. I tried to put it into the table just to make life easy. If you want to play around and like make it look the way you want to make it look, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Like I said, just for, especially for people watching the recording, if your goal is keep it simple, just use the table, right? If you want to start to play around and experiment with the structure of this type of essay, absolutely, Nori, go for it. I totally support that. So yeah, and have a good meeting. Good luck.
You too. Thank you.
Bye, Nori. Other ideas, questions, examples, what else? Maybe I'll ask then, at the end here, what do you need? just this now, this is just a question for you guys in the room with me here. So if you're watching the recording, forgive me. What do you guys need from me? Is there anything you need from me to feel confident to just start writing this project? Is there anything I can do to help you feel ready and comfortable to just go for it? I'll give people time to type just in case they're typing. Cool. Well, like I said, my goal for today, I've got just a little shorty little PowerPoint like I was showing, but my goal for today was to just really do. Daryl, I'm going to mute you. I don't know if it sounds like there was background noise or stuff. If you do want to talk, you can unmute yourself when it's a little more quiet. Yeah, my goal for today was really to just be here to answer questions for you guys and look at some examples. It ended up being fantastic that we got to look at Ruba's examples. And again, hopefully it was helpful for you guys in the recording. I think 3 of the quotes I already sort of gave you the answer for the character being described and the point of view. You know, those things do have sort of correct answers. But again, what I really want you to do is to practice writing about these big picture themes and ideas. So that was really great to be able to look at some specific examples. No problem, Daryl, at all. But like I said, if that's it, my goal for today was to
Professor, sorry.
Please.
Yeah, sorry. I was just gonna ask you because I think I was thinking the more I read about the book, I think my theme is gonna be mainly about mental health and insanity.
Okay.
And then some of the themes, I probably just saw one that I can connect properly to my theme. But I can still try to work the quotes that you gave us and and try to connect that. But basically my question is like if I'm writing my analysis, can I add some quotes from the book that's not listed in your example?
Tricky. I know, Daryl, you're a great student and I know your work. So yeah, I think it's a little bit risky just in case, but if you choose wisely, yeah.
I mean, I will still like I will definitely choose like 2 from your example, but I was just thinking like maybe to add more for my analysis. Can I add some?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it makes me nervous, but yes, I think anytime a student tells me that they want to be ambitious, I always say, yes, go for it. I'd say, like this quote that we already analyzed definitely has some mental health stuff in here, right? Like the brain compartmentalizing and lying to himself, like that's all, you could all do that from the mental health perspective.
Yeah, that's one of the quotes that I saw. That's easily to connect to insanity and mental health, but
yeah, I'm going to say yes. It makes me nervous, but I know your work. So I'm going to say yes, absolutely. If you feel confident, go for it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Cool. Daryl being brave. I love it. Any other ideas or questions? So Ruba started. I don't know. I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. I'm just curious. It seems to me like, and this class is so weird because I've never met almost so few of you. But I totally lost it. I totally lost what I was going to say there. It's totally gone. Totally forgot. I just had total Zoom brain there, you guys. I'm so sorry. What I was going to say. It seems like a lot of you are still sort of reading the book and analyzing the book and sort of getting ready to write, which is fine. But I know Ruba had obviously something to look at. And so like I said, my goal for today was to answer any questions and help you guys feel ready and comfortable to write. Because I think at a certain point with this type of big picture literary analysis stuff, you just got to do it. Like that's why it's so great we got to look at Ruba's examples, right? She had already sat down and started it. So yeah, any other ideas, questions, anything I can do to help you guys? Literally anything I can do to help you guys? Cool. Well, like I said, if not, I didn't have anything specific that I wanted to. Good. Daryl says it was helpful. Good. That's great. I hope so. I hope so. Yeah. Well, then that's all I got. And today's our last Zoom meeting, right? So today for coming up is just enjoy your summer break. Daryl saying thank you, Ruby. You're getting lots of love from Martha and from Daryl. And like usually when I keep saying people should be thankful to Ruba, it's also just for the people who are watching the recording. And again, it's not a problem, you guys. I just think that when so few people show up to these live Zoom sessions, you know, only 5 or 6 people, it's just a lot of pressure on those students, right? Because their examples get to help everybody. So it's not to make people feel bad for watching the video recording. I think it's just to make people understand, you know, especially the way I like to teach is I don't just like, I need you guys, you know, I need you guys to teach. I need your questions. I need to know how you're feeling and what you're thinking. So all of you, we could say the same thing. I shouldn't just say it to Ruba too, but everybody who's been here consistently, it's been this group, right? Rahila and Ruba, Wenchen, Fazal and Daryl, Nuri just left. Martha, I think, was here and left. But you guys, you know, you were the ones who were like putting gasoline in this car this semester. Do you know what I mean? Like I've got the car and I'm the driver, but I got to get a little gas from the students to make it meaningful and make it important to you guys. So, so thank you to all of you, not just to Ruba. That's it. I was going to ask one more time, any other ideas or questions, but I'm pretty sure the answer is no. So, if there are, I'll stay and I can stay with you guys through the end of class. I've got class after this, but I can stay. If you have questions that come up as you're writing, go ahead and let me know. Send me an email. Remember everything, you know, you've got what, 4 or 5 more days, you know, the end of the semester officially on May 16th. So if anything comes up between now and then, just let me know. And yeah, I hope, even if you never study literature again, I hope you learned something, or I hope you saw something in this class that changed the way that you think about poems or think about stories. That's all I'm ever trying to do with these classes, is to just change the way you see things or approach things, even just a little bit, because I think that's what education is for. So I will stop the recording now. I'll stay and answer questions from anybody if you've got them, but otherwise, thank you all so much for your great work and hard work this semester. And I really hope you take a break, you know, be nice to yourself, relax. So I'm going to stop the recording now. Daryl, I just saw your comment. Oh, hold on.